Hello everyone, welcome back to Water Moon Cards. This is your host known as Luna, and I'm going to make a video that's kind of a mid-year check-in, although it's not exactly the mid-year check-in tag from Chanel Days. I was, however, inspired to make this video based on some responses to that tag, including ScholarBot's video. They did an interesting kind of freeform version of that tag, kind of answered the prompts, but also did some other stuff. So I'm definitely not going to go by any of the prompts, but I might accidentally kind of cover some of that in this video. This kind of video is problematic for me to watch at times, so while I'm happy to be sharing this with you and I want you to get joy out of it, if haul videos or recent acquisitions or whatever, that kind of stuff puts you off or tempts you too much and makes you uncomfortable, please turn away now. I don't necessarily love making this kind of video, but it's interesting to me to think about why I'm picking what I'm picking. So that's really where I'm trying to focus my attention, and not so much like, ooh, shiny, isn't this great? What I'll cover here is recent acquisitions, so that's from the start of the year, and most of these were around birthday time in the spring. And then a couple of things that I bought for myself. One deck that I haven't received, but I'll mention it because it's on the way. And then some things that fell off the wish list, and then kind of a state of the wish list, or investigation list, I should say, because not everything on my wish list is necessarily going to be something I really do want, but things I'm interested in. All right, so first up we have birthday gifts. Thank you very much to my various generous family who purchased these decks that were on my wish list for me. The first one was the Modern Goth Tarot. I featured this in my queer decks video. You can look at that for more information. This is a beautiful deck. I love the goth aesthetic that still incorporates a lot of color. I do like color in my decks generally, and this has soft, lovely jewel tones, and quite a diverse array of people. It also has pip cards. I think I still have this kind of separated out between face cards and pip cards from when I did that walkthrough. So let me get you some pips so that they're fun. They're all different, and they do have like hints of, maybe RWS type meanings or interpretations that you could make. But you don't have to use the hints necessarily. Like the Two of Cups, right, has hearts on it. And I think I'm going to make a video about different kinds of pips and what I see people doing with those. But each pip is unique, or each pip card is unique, so they're not all just like copy and paste clones of each other. I do like that about it. I like that there's even a diversity in the type, the shade of skin tone on the hands holding the implements and the aces, for example. And then, like I said, the people are very, very much a mix of different ages, different physical presentations and characteristics, and so on. So that is the Modern Goth Tarot. It's by Natalie Foss. It is mass market, and I will put information down below so you can find out more. All right, the next thing I asked for my birthday was not a tarot deck, actually. It was this, the Magic Lantern Sibylla. And I got this for 3 reasons, really. Or I requested it for 3 reasons. One is it comes with an absolutely massive tome of a guidebook by Kathleen Matthews, who walks you through how to read Sibylla. And it's essentially, it says right here, a complete 52-week course. So it's not just like these cards mean this, but Sibylla is one of those cartomancy techniques where the order of the cards and the sequence of the cards really matters. And so cards take on different specific meanings depending on the order that they present themselves in the spread. So there's lots of exercises, there are lots of if then then that kind of information to memorize. And I don't know if I'm going to love reading Sibylla, but of all the non-tarot cartomancy kind of things you can do with like a 52 card deck, this is the one that appeals to me the most. And so I figured, why not give it a shot? And this is like mass market now, but who knows how long it'll be in print. So I did request this, for my birthday. Thank you, Mom. The other reasons I was attracted to this were that it is illustrated by Anastasia Kashian, who did the much beloved Dinosaur de Marseille. So that was an indie release that she did, and it's a Marseille deck featuring dinosaurs. You can find out more about that in my video on favorite pip decks. So she did all these beautiful, rich, very detailed illustrations for this deck, and I absolutely love this. It's very different and much more detailed than the Dinosaur de Marseille, which, you know, that one looks more like wood blocks. This one is much more like fully illustrated, like a picture book, or yeah, I don't know what the medium is here. Maybe pen and watercolor or something. I haven't looked into that much detail, but whatever medium she used, it's absolutely brilliant. And there's so much going on in these cards. I really love this art style. The other thing is kind of a picky detail, but you'll notice that these cards have a black border. And when I was looking into Sibylla, Tom Benjamin has made several videos a number of years ago on how he reads the Sibylla, and he was using a demonstration deck from Los Scarabeo that is now out of print. You can get counterfeit copies of it, but they are counterfeit, and I'm not suggesting that you do. I'm just saying that that's what's available, so don't get fooled, because the current one that's in print that's legitimate from Los Scarabeo has white borders, and I really like these black borders a lot. I think because these cards have a lot of kind of fortune-tellery doom and gloom around them, I prefer the black borders. It just makes the art pop, and it makes the deck, I don't know, feel a little more serious or something. So it was important to me that this had black borders, or appealing to me that it had black borders. So those three things, the two people involved in creating this, and then the beautiful artwork and the black borders just kind of sold it for me. So I'm looking forward to starting my 52-week study. Don't know when that's going to be, but I'm definitely going to work through this workbook in detail and appreciate everything that it has to offer. So whenever I do start my studies, I'll let you know. All right, and then the third one was actually a surprise. It's not one that I picked out myself, and I probably wouldn't have requested this because it is somewhat AI generated. And this is the Tarot du Monde Entier. I have seen a few of the bigger channels feature this, and it is absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to show you some cards this time and talk a little bit more about it, but you know, do use your own judgment, obviously, when it comes to AI-generated art. I have my own feelings about it. What gives me pause with this is that I'm not sure how heavily the artist has used the AI. It seems that from their other deck, which is a kind of a composite, using the forms from the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot and then photographs of their, you know, friends and people that they know, they probably use quite a bit of prompting. And I don't know how much of this is drawn and how much of this is, you know, find me images of a parrot and put it on this card. You know, find me images of a black man in this kind of costume, in this kind of art style. You know, I have no idea. And the artist behind this does not have any kind of process descriptions on his website. He doesn't have any process videos or, you know, sketches or works in progress or anything like that. So it is incredibly difficult to assess exactly what it means by, like, you know, used AI. I know that one reviewer mentioned that they talked to them, and you know, the discussion was, oh well, I used it to just like clean up my drawings and do some editing. And it's like, okay, but there are just a few elements here and there that kind of make me wonder about this. So while I like this deck and I use it, and I'm very happy to have it, I'm very grateful. I might not have chosen to buy it for myself, and you know, I'm not necessarily recommending it to others. There's an RWS hint for you with the globe on the Two of Wands. So yeah, it does obviously has diversity, and it has diversity, I think, in a sympathetic way, where you're seeing each person in the traditional dress of their culture or country. So it's not like all the white people are wearing jeans and t-shirts and all the people from Africa are wearing, leopard skin or something like that. I've seen that kind of thing, and that's problematic because you're implying that modernity has not come to the entire world. But this doesn't do that. It's got everybody in their traditional dress, and I think that makes it very cool, very visual appealing, and very interesting. So yeah, so I like. I hate to say that I like this deck because of the AI question. And if you find out more about this particular deck, or this artist, please drop a note in the comments and let me know. Or if you are the artist and you care to clarify, how much you've used or in what ways you've used AI technology to create this, inquiring minds would like to know. And maybe some people would be more interested in purchasing your decks if they could understand how you're using that tool. So that's the Tarot du Monde Entier. It's basically based on the 1JJ Swiss tarot, and it's by Antoine Mayer, and they have a website, which again I'll link to, and you can read more about them. And finally, on my birthday haul, all I got for my birthday was tarot decks, by the way. I didn't get other stuff. And so my final birthday gift was from my partner. Thank you, sweetheart. This is the Tarocchi Pellerin d'Epinal of 1830, and this is a facsimile copy by my absolute favorite historic card reproducer, Giordano Berti, of Rinascimento Italian art. I have talked about him in my historic deck producers video. All of his decks come with a really beefy booklet. This one looks like it's for this deck specifically. Sometimes they're about like the regional tarots of the time period. But I looked forward to, I've scanned that booklet a little bit, but I look forward to reading it more. And here are the cards. Now you can get this in a vintage version from the 1970s, and it has very bright colors, very saturated colors. I wanted this one. This is a Juno and Jupiter deck, so it has those cards instead of the Pope and the Papess. And this is a French deck, which I don't have very many of, and that's another reason that I wanted to get this one, because I don't have a lot of French decks. I don't really like a lot of the traditional French decks, but I like the dark blue and this kind of mint green in here. I think that's beautiful, and it helps it not be so primary color. There's also a lighter blue, so that we actually get two shades of blue, which really kind of varies it. And we get different kinds of flowers and things than we would normally see. So here we've got acorns in among the foliage on the Ace of Swords, for example. You also get some of the face cards are in different poses than they would normally be on a traditional Tarot de Marseille. And you've got nice expression. You've got a little bit more detail in the faces. And as Taproot Tarot, Ina pointed out, and she's the one who first turned me on to just this deck as a historic item, different costumes, different titles, really beautiful looking animals. So the horses in particular have a lot more detail on them than a traditional Tarot de Marseille. And that is because, as again, I learned from Ina, this is created in what's called end grain engraving as opposed to standard woodblock engraving. So you can get a finer level of detail than you can in standard woodblock engraving. And it's kind of between woodblock and then something like a copper plate, which is what the Tarocco Soffofino or other, super high-end tarots of the time would have been created with. So this is a nice kind of in-between technology, and it's an in-between looking tarot. To me, it looks more Italian than French, even though we know it's French. But it nods, I think, to the Italian. I have another Italian deck with cups that are shaped like that. So there's a lot of reasons I love this deck, and I'm very happy to have a copy of it. So thank you to Ina for tempting me. And thank you to Giordano Berti for creating this beautiful facsimile that really does a lovely job of presenting the cards. I love the devil in the hot pants with the extra long tail. That's a great card. Yeah, so many cool things to love about this deck. And again, that's the Tarot Epinal of 1830, and this is the Rinascimento Italian art version of that. All right, so from there, I'll move on to things I've purchased for myself this year. And the first one is really this book, which again was an Ina made me do it. She had a great video that I'll link to about kind of guidebooks that are good introductions to Tarot de Marseille, or they give you another side of Tarot de Marseille. And this is one from Mary Packard. So this deck and book set comes as a kit in a massive box that I can't even fit on camera. And then the cards are almost as big as this book. They're just about as tall. I'm not going to flip through this deck because this copy that I got off eBay is actually still shrink wrapped. So the box has, been unwrapped, but the cards themselves are still shrink wrapped. And I plan to sell this after I'm finished studying the book a little bit more. I've paged through the book. I can't say that it's really blowing my mind, but there are some spreads and things in here that I want to make note of before I get rid of this and move it along for my collection. So I think if you're a complete, Tarot de Marseille fanatic and you're a completist and you really want to have Mary Packard's input on this, sure, go ahead. I think you can still, find copies of this for under $40 US on the used tarot market. So it's not one that's going for stupid money. But, it's just not something that's going to stay in my collection, in part because I'm not interested in the cards. These cards are based on the Pierre Madinier, or they're a reproduction or enlargement of the Pierre Madinier. And again, it's one of those French decks where I'm like, the faces are nice, but I just don't love the coloring. And I certainly don't need a Tarot de Marseille that's bigger than a standard tarot size. I have a version of this that's the Mama Miyuki tarot. That's a redraw of the Madinier. So it's much cleaner and it has more saturated colors, and I like that one just fine. So I definitely don't need two copies of a French deck that I'm kind of on. And then last for new acquisitions, and again, it's a double header here with Who Made Me Do This. Really, it's a tarot with Mims made me do it. But Ina did remind me about this deck. I had seen it on Mims's channel. She did a more detailed walkthrough a couple of months ago, and then I kind of forgot about it because it didn't grab me right away. But then I went back and I saw Ina's a recent video by Ina on Taproot Tarot, and I was like, oh yeah, let me take another look at the Black is Art tarot deck. That looks interesting. And when I watched Mims's video a second time, I was like, gotta have it. Absolutely. The light bulb went off as to the brilliance of this deck. So Black is Art is a tarot deck featuring all sorts of historic paintings by white European artists, as far as I can tell. I don't know if there's any actually Black artists involved in this, except for the curator of the deck, which is a Black person. So now they go by Now I See. And I believe they're from Brazil. But they have taken historic portraiture of Black folks, again, painted by white Europeans. So it's a really interesting lens, and made a tarot deck out of it. And so it's all just portraits. There's a little bit of scenery in some of the cards, like this one, not a ton. And a lot of them are just basically focused on the character and whatever clothing they're wearing. And then for the pips, we have interesting choices here. We have the implements set inside sympathetic shapes for the implements. So, and they're extracted from paintings. So here we have the wands, and it's a staff shape in a rectangular box. And then we have the swords, which are, someone kind of holding onto their scabbard. I don't know if you can see that, but then in a triangular shape. And the pentacles or coins are a hand with a coin inside of a round shape. So, and then you have the cups, which is kind of does its own thing. It's also round, but it's got these dividers between, these like staff-like dividers, so you can more easily tell the difference between the cups and the coins. They are all labeled, as you can see, so it's not too bad to differentiate them. And again, I thought this was kind of weird and maybe a, quote unquote lazy pips, but it's not. It's very thoughtfully arranged. So if you go through the whole pips, you can see that they put a lot of thought into how they were going to lay them out. And what that does for a reading is it gives you breathing room, because the paintings are so saturated with details and tone and color and expression and clothing and all of that, that if you just have, a ton of portraits, I find that kind of overwhelming. If that was your reading, it would be a lot to take in. So what's nice about having these planar pips that are more just geometric, is that they kind of break that up and give your brain just space to kind of take in the reading and make sense of things. So this deck obviously will not be for everybody, and I want to do a more in-depth video about it once I've used it some more. And I'll talk about the guidebook. The guidebook does have credits for the paintings that are used. So, but for now, just know that this is a new deck. I've done a few readings with it, and I really, really, really like it, even more than I thought I would. I've struggled with portraiture style decks in the past, so I wasn't sure about this one, but right out of the gate, it's been hitting hard. And again, that is called the Black is Art Tarot, and it's by Now I See. It's produced in Tennessee by a U.S. printing press that specializes in cards. So, and I got my copy off eBay, but apparently they sell on eBay, Etsy, and various places. So I'll link to Mims's video and you can find out more about it there. So that's it for acquisitions thus far this year. I will mention that I just ordered a copy of the Matronua Tarot from Valentina in Italy. She is a watercolor artist and she's done amazing work. I managed to dodge the original Kickstarter because the cards in the original format were oversized and on almost like a watercolor paper. And I just thought, nope, shuffling nightmare, storage nightmare, not gonna, I don't need this. But absolutely beautiful Italian deck. And then she came out with a pocket edition, and it's, a little bit shorter than a standard tarot deck. And then also has updated a lot of the pips to include more realistic looking flowers. So instead of the traditional designs of the flowers that look like woodcut designs, these are more freeform watercolor style flowers, and that sold me on it. It really did. The pips are so gorgeous. So the deck for those that live in the U.S. Now with our ridiculous tariffs and high shipping costs, the deck would have been over $120 just for the pocket edition to get here. So I was about to resist it a second time, and then I realized that I am going to be in Europe coming up soon, and I have a friend who is willing to receive a package for me. So shipping from Italy to another European country is much easier and cuts the shipping cost in half and avoids the tariffs. So that kind of put it back within reasonable, independent artist kind of range of $80 US. And I just said, you know what, it's kind of now or never, right? I don't know how many of these things she ran off. I don't know how many more releases she's going to do, but if I think I want a copy, this is my best, most affordable chance to get one. And I'm looking forward to it. Again, Ina did a video, a walkthrough of it when she got her copy, and I was reminded of that when Tom Benjamin recently did just a post, like a community post, and I'm thinking he's planning on doing a video. Thanks to those two big influences on me. And I don't have anything quite like this in my collection, I will say. That's another reason I'm drawn to do this, is not only is it absolutely stunningly beautiful and very detailed, but to have a modern deck that is completely hand painted, I can't really point, a modern tarot that's completely hand painted, I can't really point to anything that I have in my collection. I think most of the people who are designing these days are really using a computer, which is absolutely fine and it's completely legitimate. It's just that when it's done in a handmade medium, it has a different feel to it, and so that's why I'm adding it to my collection. So I have stuff I'm just definitely decided not to get, and then I have other stuff that I is still kind of like an I don't know. And I wanted to talk about why. So in no particular order, I had talked about the Jane Austen tarot earlier this year. I can't remember in what context, but thinking about, maybe adding a literary tarot deck to my collection because I don't have any that are based on literature. And I thought, well, Jane Austen is like my best shot because it's an author who has a fairly small number of books, and I've read all of them. And I've seen multiple adaptations of them multiple times, and so I'm very familiar with the characters, the scenes, the settings, the kind of the key moments, the inflection points of all the stories. It would be easy for me to read tarot with a Jane Austen tarot deck. I would not have to study the guidebook unless I couldn't figure out who the character was in a particular card. But I'm just finding the illustration style a little too saccharine for me. I just kind of can't get over that, and so I've decided not to get the Jane Austen tarot. I decided not against a Love Scarabeo deck that I was really looking forward to seeing more of the cards, and that is the Chromatica Tarot. It just is coming out now. The official release date is August, but I think some people are already starting to get their decks, or maybe they're getting advanced copies. I don't know. But there are some flip-throughs up there now, and I thank goodness for people that do walkthroughs, because I looked at this and I was immediately like, nope, because it's an RWS clone. It's in this really cool Bauhaus style, minimalist style, and I was hoping it would be more original, but it's essentially adapted from the Pamela Coleman Smith settings and poses. It's just in a different art style. And I've really stopped collecting close clones of the RWS. I have 7 or 8 copies of the original deck myself, and then a few clones. And I feel like that's too many. And so I'm definitely not going to add any more, and I would say that, if you like RWS clones, the Chromatica Terra is fun because it's a completely different art style. And I think the colors are fun. It's well executed for what it is. It's just not my jam because I'm not looking for any more RWS clones of any kind. But as I told another tarot collector, it's good when things don't appeal to you, because then you don't have to collect it, right? You're not tempted, and you can move on to something else, or save that money or save that space in your house. Another one that I was sad to kind of skip over, and this is a beautiful historic deck restoration, is the Amparo Aguirre Minchiati decks. She has several and has been releasing them over the last couple of years, and she has one now that's recolored, and it's got gilding on it, which is kind of weird for like a mass market, something that was like originally quickly printed for the mass market. They're Minchiati decks, and I have 2 Minchiati decks, and I'm glad I have 2 Minchiati decks. 3 if you count the Dinosaur de Marseille, 4 if you count the Heather Hall deck with the expansion pack. So really, I have enough Minchiati decks, and I really like the ones that I have, and I don't use them a ton. I haven't studied how to play the game. I haven't really studied the extra cards, and so why would I need a 5th or 6th or 7th one? I really don't. Another historic deck that I had been seriously considering trying to find some kind of production of is the Tarocchi Perrin. It's another Italian deck, and it might be lithography. I'll have to put it up on the screen. But it's where you have multiple plates per image, and each plate has a color. And then you have to make sure that when you print it, the plates are matching onto the paper. You have registration marks so that you get a nice crisp printing. Otherwise, you get kind of a blurry image. And unfortunately, the extant historic copy of the Tarocchi Perrin is misaligned. And so you do get this kind of like blurry, newspaper, like bad newsprint kind of effect on a lot of the cards. And I used to have a copy of this deck. It was a mass market version that's no longer in print. I sold it in a lot on eBay, and I was kind of regretting it for a while. And then I saw another walkthrough of a more carefully restored version by Giordano Berti, but it's still, it's still misaligned. Like the images are a little bit cleaned up, but the colors are still misaligned because it's scans of the original. And it just drives me nuts. It kind of gives me a headache to look at it. So I just struck that one off my list. Unless somebody goes in and actually redraws this in some way or somehow refabricates it, I think this is going to stay off my acquisitions list because I can't look at it. Even though it's a cool deck and it has some really interesting features. It's from a certain style and time period in Italy. And so it's got like the cobbler for the magician card and things like that. But yeah, anyway, Cherokee Prin, it's not coming into my collection. Another style that I was considering and have been really kind of hunting for a long time would be a collage deck. I went on this, hunt looking at YouTube and looking at all these videos, and I thought maybe the Hidden Light Tarot might have been a choice for me. And then I rewatched some walkthroughs of it more recently, and I decided, nope, it's not for me. However, that one is now back in print. The artist is doing like a 10-year anniversary reprint of it. So, and I was sitting here fretting, going, I'm never going to find a collage deck that I really like. But then I remembered that I have the David Bowie Tarot. This is the Starman Tarot, and this is the first version from Lo Scarabeo and the artist. It's the more simple version. It doesn't have all the extra stuff that they put in the quote remastered version. And I like this much better. I saw the remastered walkthrough and I didn't like that deck at all. This may be out of print now, but I'm sure you can find copies of it around. I've seen copies on eBay for sure. It's very busy. It's very colorful. It's very overwhelming. It's very esoteric if you read the guidebook. Don't ask me why I like this, because I really can't tell you. I mean, I like the art. I guess I like how busy and overwhelming it is. But, I'm like sitting here moping going, I'll never find the collage deck for me. And it's like, that's because you already have it. It's right there. So yeah, I like this deck, and I want to pull it out and do some more readings with it. I think it's one of those where you only need 3 cards because you got a lot to go on, lots of little details and stuff. But I like the way this presents some of the ideas of tarot. And if I do want a new take on the cards, I can certainly look in the guidebook, because it is wild the way that the authors of this have understood what tarot is and the meanings of the cards. So I don't necessarily agree with them, but it's always interesting to see another perspective on something and get some ideas, and also just an explanation. Like, they talk about the different elements in the card, and so if you're like, what the hell is that thing, they'll tell you in the book. So that's helpful. So yeah, so the Starman Tarot is my collage deck for now and for the foreseeable future, and I really don't need to shop for one anymore, which is a nice relief. And so finally, I wanted to talk about some decks that are sort of still on my wish list, but I'm not sure about all of them. I definitely am not going to get all these. So going back to the idea of Italian decks or Italian style decks, one I've had my eye on off and on for a long time is Tarocco Bizzarro. This is a Del Negro tarot deck, and it's a farcical deck. It's a satire of tarot, or what you would call a caricature, a set of caricatures. I like the caricatures. I think they're funny. I like the sense of humor. And I also really like the pips in this deck. Most of them have a little kind of animal or creature on them, or other little funny thing going on. And the layout for the pips is different from a standard kind of Marseille or Italian layout. I like the deck's sense of humor. Really, what Tarocco Bizzarro would be for me is an affordable version, dupe of a long out-of-print deck from Il Meneghello that was released in the 1980s, and that was called Tarocco Favoloso. I believe they only did one print run of this. This was when Osvaldo Menenghesi was still alive and still hand-making all the boxes for the tarot decks. And this is like a total farcical send-up of the RWS, and it is just chef's kiss, like brutally amazing, and I love it. It's full of bugs and insects. It's full of like visual jokes, and I would love to have a copy of this. Unfortunately, there aren't very many copies available, and when they do come up for sale, they're $500 or $600 now. And it's not, it's not about, for me, it's not about collecting in order to make a profit on anything or to like use tarot cards as an investment. I think pieces of paper is probably a terrible investment long term, but I just love the artwork, and I wish this was back in print and I could just get it at a normal, Il Meneghello price. So Tarocco Bizzarro would be my stand-in kind of tarot satire deck for the Tarocco Fabuloso. I've also been thinking about like minimalist black and white decks in a, sort of a woodblock style. And so there's three that kind of fall into this category. One is something called 20th Century Tarot. It was printed in California by a small press in the 1970s, and you can find copies on eBay for stupid, too much money. I did actually purchase a copy on eBay for less than stupid money, and I got it, and it was more damaged than the person had disclosed in the listing. So I sent it back. Fortunately, they took it back. So I was glad to handle the copy and actually see it up close because it kind of gave me a better sense of the cardstock, but I haven't really found another copy that I'd be willing to buy. So that's kind of on the list. It's more of a sketch style, but it is at black and white. And I just love some of the individual cards, like the sun, the guy squinting at the sun. Temperance is interesting because it's a knight like cutting a cup in half. The hanged man is just a hanged man. He's not like chilling out. He's strung up. I enjoy the imagery and the jokes again, but we'll see if I can come across a reasonably priced copy that's in good enough shape. I'm also looking at the Usi Lux Arcana Tarot, the most recent release from them. I had a meetup with Laura of Aquamarine 18 Tarot and Books, and got to fondle her copy that she had just gotten in. It is gorgeous, and I like a lot of aspects of it. I like the pips a great deal, and I like the court cards a great deal. I'm not so sure about all of the majors. I think that's where I'm having some hesitation. So we'll see. I'll keep thinking about it and, maybe set it aside mentally for 6 months and come back and look at some more walkthroughs and see what I think. I've also done some walkthroughs and looking at the Echo Tarot, which is it's in a woodblock style. This one's designed on a computer, but it's got that look to it, or lino cut kind of style, I should say. Lux Arcana is also lino cut. So the Echo Tarot looks lino cut. It's cuter. It's more cutesy. Again, I like the sort of sparse symbolic look of it. I like the pips a lot because they're all different. Again, don't know if I love all the choices for all the majors and all the face cards. So I keep going back and forth with that one. One that I think I will definitely get at some point, I just don't know when, is Tarot des Ozarks. And this is a painterly sketch style Marseille deck. So it takes the traditional structure and form of the Marseille and adds kind of a modern art interpretation over top of that. And I think the artist did, really amazing work with their choices of color, and you can see the brush strokes, and it's a little bit abstract. I really, really like it. And then one that I'm not sure of that's also an art deck is called Abstract Futures. It's by an art collective. It's two artists who go by Hilma's Ghost. And it's a really interesting story. So there was an artist named Hilma, and they had a particular painting style. And I'm not going to remember all the details off the top of my head, so I'll link to their, kind of about their collective and everything. But they're essentially channeling this dead artist and trying to recreate works that are in the same vein as what they might have produced. And they've produced a tarot deck, and it's all abstract shapes, circles, triangles, rectangles, squares, and a variety of colors. And I found out about this through M.A. the Gray. They included it in their Queer Decks for Pride video a couple of years ago, which I've watched a few times. I find that video so touching. And then I saw a full walkthrough and a sample reading on Catamancy Tarot's channel. And I really liked the way that she read with this deck, because she really she leaned into the visuals, which are pretty minimalist. I mean, again, it's just shapes. And I thought it was a brilliant way to read, with what's in front of you. So I don't know if I would get on with this deck or not. It might be too abstract for me, like too abstract, but also too pointy and specific because it's shapes. I was kind of thinking that the black is art because of the way that it uses the pips. This might be like an okay substitute for the abstract futures, again, because just this, the way the shapes do together. Because this is kind of the vibe of the abstract futures. It's just that abstract futures uses more different colors. So the Blackest Art, it's just these same excerpts over and over again, and therefore the color palette kind of stays in this historic oil painting kind of, realm. Abstract Futures uses like bright pinks and purples and other colors. I don't know. It's lovely. It's also $100, which I will spend $100, no problem, on an indie deck. I definitely want to support artists, but I have to really know that I want the deck. It has to really be like, yes, this is a definite A+, would buy again kind of thing. And I don't quite know that about myself in Abstract Futures yet. So we'll see. I'm also interested in something called the Lighted Window Tarot, and this was the one deck that I didn't really refresh my memory on before I sat down to record this video. So I'll put up a picture here. I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was just pretty, but I haven't gone back to kind of revise my thinking on that one. And then the two more on my possibilities list. One, again, a modern kind of tongue-in-cheek joke deck called the Tarot of Musterberg, which uses that same Lombardic Neoclassico or Tarot of Paris pip arrangement. It's cute. It's kind of a limited color palette. It's somewhat cartoony, and it's set in this like penny arcade, sideshow sort of universe. So, like a carnival entertainment sort of space. It appealed to me when it came out. It appealed to me when I reviewed it. A couple years later, it appealed to me earlier this year, and it's still on the list. And it, too, I think would cost like $100 or $120 to ship from Germany to the U.S. right now. And I don't know if I love it $120 worth. So we'll see what happens with that. Apparently, the cardstock is amazing, though, and it shuffles really well. So that's always an appeal for me. And then the last one is a modern deck. And it's a mass market version of one that was indie originally. And again, when I met up with Laura, they let me look at their Lobanco Tarot, the mass market edition, and I liked it in person more than I've liked it seeing it in videos, and I liked it more like laying out 3 or 4 or 5 cards together than I did one card at a time. So it's an interesting phenomenon sometimes when you see things in person or when you actually do a reading versus watching a walkthrough where the cards are in order. It gives you a very different sense. I think walkthroughs are very helpful in maybe identifying, individual cards or maybe suits, or you like the majors but you don't like the quartz, or vice versa. I think those kinds of walkthroughs can really help, but sometimes you can't really see what a deck is doing until you lay cards out together. And so having that experience was really valuable. I've also heard people complaining about the cardstock, but I actually love it. It's the thin Llewellyn cardstock, and it's flexible yet sturdy, and I really loved just shuffling that deck was wonderful. So I'm tempted just because it's mass market. It's still supporting, an independent artist, and it's cool. It's got cool colors. My hang up about it is that it's kind of based their deck in part on the Mary L, is what I was reading. And the Mary L is based in part on the Thoth. And I really dislike the Thoth and the Mary L for different reasons. And so, I don't know, there is some of that kind of aggressive, I would say heavy, dark energy in the Lobanco, and I can't quite decide if it's for me or not for that reason. So that's still on the maybe list. Anyway, yeah, that's where I am with acquisitions and thinking about other decks. If you'd like more detail on anything I've shown you here, I was thinking about maybe doing a walkthrough with this deck because I haven't seen one that's shot really close up to the cards. There's one on Tarot Oculus's channel, but he shoots his walkthroughs way far away, and it's hard to see the cards. So I could do a walkthrough on this one if anybody wants me to. I also might do it as a sort of comparison video with another historic deck. I haven't quite decided, but let me know if that would be interest, or if there's anything else that I've mentioned that you'd like to hear me ramble about more. In terms of next up for the channel, I am working on re-editing a numerology series that I did on my old channel that I was really glad I actually found most of the old footage for. So I'm recutting that cutting it down a little bit, and I'll put some of the blah, blah, blah parts into a blog post, and then try to keep the videos a little bit shorter and a little bit more action-packed. But yeah, that's an exciting project. So that'll be coming up probably after I get back from my Europe trip at this point. I've got some ideas after that, including maybe going back to my vachetta coloring project. That might be what happens after that one. But again, if you have ideas for things you'd like me to talk about, or things I've shown on the channel that you'd like more information on, let me know. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.